بسم الله الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على خاتم الأنبياء أشرف المرسلين وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين أما بعد. So we're having issues and difficulties uploading the lessons that we have with the people, which we still do. So inshallah, I'm just gonna go through the same lessons again, put it here so I can put it on YouTube inshallah. So this lesson inshallah is about what we call the Jawrab, which is just a normal sock. It's not the leather sock, it's a normal sock. The definition of Jawrab, if you want to talk about linguistically, it's actually not an Arabic word. It's a word that we made Arabic, but it's specifically a Persian word, which is they say Jawrab, which came from an older language, which is an Aramaic word, which comes from Gharab, and in the Aramaic where it comes from, it means a pouch for the foot. For us, you can take it as whatever is worn on the foot, other than leather, like a soof, or what's like it, like cotton and others. Ibn Hazm said it can be made out of wool, linen, felt, cotton, fur, even hair. Back in the days, they used to make the jawrab out of camel hair. Either way, you know, we know what a sock is. And when you put it on the foot, it should be something that stays on the foot. It can't be like a rag. You take a sharita, a rag, then you wrap it around your foot and you say this is a jawrab. No, because you walk a few steps, it's probably gonna untie, right? And either way, a rag, what I just said, or something you wrap around the foot, this cannot be wiped upon during wudu by ijma'. So the proof is ijma'. Imam Suyuti said, because there is no proof for it. So that was their thing, right? Rags, so the rags don't meet the definition of a jawrab anyway. So you need to know what the definition of a jawrab is, and does it meet it or does not meet it. And another thing we're gonna have to define before we keep going in the lesson is something called a jurmu, which is something that was worn over the khuf, like a boot or a shoe, and it can also be wiped on, and if it meets the criteria, as long as it covers the foot up to and including the ankles for both the jawrab and the jurmu. Okay, so the majority of scholars said you can wipe on the thick jawrab, okay, but not the thin one, okay, and this was the opinion of the majority. Some scholars tried to make it some scholars tried to say that no, this is the opinion of all the scholars, like ijma', like Ibn Qattan and others reported that there's ijma' that you cannot wipe on a thin jawrab, only the thick one. This is wrong, because there are scholars that took the opinion that you can wipe on a thin jawrab. There's a whole madhab that said you can wipe on the thin jawrab, with the Zahiri madhab. And also there are scholars like Sheikh Albani and others that took the same opinion that you can wipe on the thin jawrab, not only the thick ones. Now let's talk about the opinion of each madhab before we get into the proof. The Hanafi madhab says you can wipe on the jawrab. A lot of people try to make it seem like no, the Hanafi madhab says only the leather sock, only the khuf. It's not true. The Hanafi madhab allowed wiping on the jawrab, and this is their mu'tamad. And if you look at the Hashiyah of Ibn Abidin, which is the go-to book for the mu'tamad of the Hanafi madhab, he wrote that according to the madhab, no, according to the two, sorry, he said according to the two is, so Imam Abu Hanifa used to have like two students that were very close to him, right? So according to the two, meaning his two students that we know of, which is Imam Muhammad ibn Hassan al-Shaybani and al-Qadi Abu Yusuf. So according to these two people, you can wipe over the jawrab. that is thick, and that was their condition, right? And Abu Hanifa also the Hashim ibn Abidin says, and Abu Hanifa also changed his view to their view. Then he says, and this is the madhab. وهذا هو المذهب. Okay, so this is what the Hashim ibn Abidin says. Also, another book that is a go-to for the Hanafis, which is Al-Hidayah, which pretty much Al-Hidayah, anybody who's a Hanafi or studied the Hanafi madhab should have studied through this book at one point or another. So Al-Hidayah says, it is not permissible to wipe on the Jawrab. Okay, it sounds like a contradiction, just wait. It is not permissible to wipe on the Jawrab except if they are leather or na'layn. Na'layn is what they mean by na'layn in this context is if it's like a Jawrab, what you think of Jawrab in the top, but leather in the bottom. So far this sounds like a contradiction, just wait. Okay, or the na'layn. And the two, meaning the two Imams that we just mentioned, said it's permissible as long as they don't expose the skin. Then it says what? And Abu Hanifa changed his view. Later on, he changed his view to their view. Meaning, technically, yes, you can wipe on the Jawrab. It used to be that you can't, but then later Abu Hanifa changed his view to their view. And upon it is the fatwa. Meaning, this is the mu'tamad of the madhab. Meaning, the madhab says you can't wipe on the normal Jawrab. Also, in the Jami' of Tirmidhi, there's a hadith about Abu Hanifa himself. Okay? So Imam Abu Isa al-Tirmidhi said, I heard from Salih ibn Muhammad al-Tirmidhi. Okay? And he said, I heard from Abu Muqatil al-Sumarqandi. He said, I entered upon Abu Hanifa. I entered upon Abu Hanifa during his sickness in which he died from, meaning in the end of his life. Okay? So Abu Hanifa, rahimahullah, he asked for water. Okay? And he made wudu. And he was wearing jawrabain, meaning the normal jawrab that you think of, right? The normal sock. So he wiped upon them. Then he said, Abu Hanifa said, I did something today that I used to not do. I wiped over the jawrabain, and they are not na'layn. And the na'layn, we said the normal jawrab, but there's a leather at the bottom. So I wiped over the jawrabain, and they're not na'layn. Meaning this is the final view of Imam Abu Hanifa, rahimahullah. All of the three early scholars of the madhab, which we mentioned earlier, Abu Hanifa and the other two, they agreed that you can wipe on the Jawrab. This is the people that built the Hanafi madhab. But they also have conditions, like later scholars, not these three, but the later scholars of the Hanafi madhab, they developed the madhab and they added more conditions if you're going to wipe on the Jawrab. And the conditions are, number one, it should be tahir, meaning there's no najasa on it. It should cover both feet up to and including the ankles. It should be worn in a state of tahara, meaning you had to have wudu before you put them on. It should be durable enough for you to walk 3 miles in them without ripping them. It shouldn't have any holes bigger than 3 toes. And they should remain on the foot without having to adjust them. And they should be that water cannot easily seep through them. Okay? This does not mean they're waterproof. A lot of people think, oh no, it has to be waterproof, and they get the waterproof jawrab. No, it's not true. The Prophet Muhammad didn't have a waterproof jawrab on them. It just means that when you wipe on them, the water doesn't immediately touch the skin. It might take a few seconds. Okay? Not all the later Hanafi scholars agreed with these conditions, because these are fatwas by some other scholars, right? Like Imam Imam al-Asr and Yusuf Binuri and Imam al-Kashmiri, they didn't agree with many of these fatwas. Actually, Imam al-Kashmiri even said that the idea of 3 miles has no proof. And he said we should only say that you can walk in them without having them slip off, but no specific distance has to be given. Okay, what about the Maliki madhab? The Maliki madhab have a weird opinion where they said you can wipe on the Jawrab if it has leather on top and on the bottom. Maybe the sides don't have to have leather. The Shafi'i madhab said, okay, the thing about the Shafi'i madhab, there are many opinions. But as we know, the Shafi'is always quote, and most of the Shafi'i madhab is built on the opinions and fatwa of Imam al-Nawawi. So we're going to mention Imam al-Nawawi's opinion, rahimahullah. Number 1, they have to be tahir, meaning they're clean, there's no najasa on them. Number 2, they have to be worn in a state of tahara, meaning you have to wear them after putting on wudu, making wudu. Number 3, they should be durable enough for a person to walk in them. There's no specific distance given. Okay. Number 4, there shouldn't be any visible holes that you can see with your eyes. Number 5, they should remain on the foot without them slipping and you adjusting them. Number 6, they should be thick enough that water does not immediately seep in them. Meaning when you wipe on them again, the water doesn't immediately touch the skin, it takes a few seconds. What about the Hanbali madhab, which is the madhab that we're studying? Ibn Qudama mentioned a few conditions. Number 1, it has to be tahir, meaning there's no najasa on it. Number 2, it has to be permissible. What we mean by permissible, meaning you didn't like steal it or something like that. If you stole it, then you cannot wipe upon it, and you guys already know the proofs for that. We mentioned that in the last lesson, so I'm not going to mention it again. It has to be permissible. Number 3, it should be worn in a state of wudu. I mean, you put on wudu, you made wudu, then you wore it. Number 4, it has to cover the whole foot up to and including the ankles. Number 5, it has to be durable enough for a person to walk in them. No specific distance. Number 6, they should remain on the foot without you having to adjust. Number 7, no holes that expose the skin. It can't be has any visible holes that you see. And Ibn Qudama specifically mentioned, and they do not need to be waterproof. There's nothing about this water seeping in or whatever, none of that. Okay? Now let's get to the proofs. This is the fun part. First, can you actually wipe on the Jawrab? Is there any proof you can wipe on the Jawrab? Recorded in Tirmidhi, Mughira ibn Shu'bah reported that the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam made wudu, then he wiped on the Jawrab and the Na'layn. Okay, meaning sometimes he wipes on the Jawrab, sometimes he wiped on the Na'layn. Imam Tirmidhi said that the hadith was Hasan Sahih, meaning it's authentic hadith. But there are scholars that criticize the hadith, including Imam Ahmad himself, Ahmad ibn Hanbal. But there is no criticism on the narrators, like the people that are narrating the hadith, but there is a criticism on the text itself, the narration. Okay? Their criticism of the hadith is that the same Sahabi himself, reported that the Prophet ﷺ made wudu and he wiped on the khuf and the imamah. So they say maybe he made a mistake and this time said the Jawrab and the Na'layn. Okay? Having said that, Shaykh Albani and other scholars graded the hadith to be sahih, to be authentic, as did Imam Tirmidhi. It's true that Imam Ahmad saw the issue with the hadith, but he still took the ruling from it. He took the hukm from it. Why? Because of the other 7 or 8 hadiths going back to Sahaba authentically that mentioned that they wiped on the Jawrab. According to Imam Ahmad, 7 or 8 of them are sahih. According to other imam, there is more like 17, whatever, right? Even if you take the hadith of the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ to be weak, seeing all these other Sahaba wipe on the Jawrab, okay, and authentically, this is enough to show that it's permissible. First, let's talk about the hadith of the Sahaba. Like how many, like which Sahabas are we talking about, right? Imam Abu Dawood said that wiping on the Jawrab has been proven upon many Sahabas, such as Ali ibn Abi Talib, Ibn Mas'ud, Bara ibn Azam, okay, Anas ibn Malik, Abu Umama, Sahal ibn Sa'd, Umar ibn طويرث, Umar ibn al-Khattab, and Ibn Abbas. Okay. Now let's see the authentication. Okay. The hadith going back to Ibn Mas'ud. So there's this book by Ibn Mundhir where he grades the hadith, so we're just gonna go to it, so it's quick. Ibn Mundhir mentioned that it was Hasan, reliable chain, we can use it. Bara ibn Azam, okay. Abu Umama also mentioned. No, hold on. So, where is that? Oh, Ibn Mundhir and Al-Awsat also mentioned that it was Hasan. Okay. When it comes to Anas ibn Malik, Ibn Mundhir mentioned in Al-Awsat with a Sahih chain. Okay. When it comes to Abu Umama also mentioned Abu Umama also mentioned this with a Hasan chain. Abu Mundhir said it was a Hasan chain, right? Sahal ibn Sa'ad, Ibn Mundhir mentioned there was a Hasan chain. Either way, there's many Hasan chains, some Sahih. Either way, a Hasan is enough to be proven. There's many of them. All of them are Hasan or Sahih. I was just giving you examples of a few of them, but all of these are either Hasan or Sahih, okay? And this is enough of proof that you can wipe on the Jawrab. Now when it comes to the conditions, okay, like the Madahib mentioned the conditions. Okay, we already mentioned a lot of these in the last dars, so I'm not going to mention them again. But for it being tahir, it's because if you have like pee on you or whatever on your clothes, you can't pray with it. It's known, so it has to be tahir. Permissible and not permissible, this is the Hanbali opinion, that has to be like not stolen or whatever, is because Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he saw a person making dua and he said, how can his dua be accepted when the food that he eats is wrong, is haram? Meaning the food was his means in order to be up and going, in order for him to make that dua and do that worship. So if your means are haram, your worship is not accepted, and your means, your socks was stolen or whatever, meaning it was not permissible, so your worship in it is not permissible, you can't wipe on it, okay? It has to be worn in a state of tahara. The Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, one time he was making wudu, we mentioned this in the last lesson, then he had on his khuf, so the Sahabi went to take off his khuf to help the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam. The Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam mentioned, he told him, leave them, for verily I have put them on in a state of tahara. Meaning if you were in a state of tahara, you had wudu on, you don't have to take them off. And you should put them on also in a state of tahara so you can wipe upon them. So it's, you know, either way, it has to cover, so it has to cover both feet, including up to and including the ankles. This has ijma' upon it. We don't really gotta mention it, but if you really want to mention it, it's because the Quran tells you to wipe from the feet up to and including the ankles, so we to wash the feet up to and including the ankles, and also says to wipe in some qira'at. So when you wipe, the Quran tells you to wipe up to including the ankles, and when you wipe, it's only during if you have a jawrab or a jurmuq or a khuf or whatever. Okay. Number 5, durable enough for a person to walk in them. Okay, so why did people wear the khuf and the jawrab at the time? They wore it to protect their feet. They didn't wear it as style, as a fashion. This is what they needed to protect their feet. So if the khuf is not durable, or the jawrab is not durable enough for you to walk in it, is it really protecting your feet? So this was the scholars' proof. And the majority of scholars take this opinion. I personally don't take this opinion, because now we protect our feet. Yeah, we still wear the socks to protect our feet when you put on your shoes or whatever. But also a thin sock can protect your feet when you have the shoes on. And they didn't always not wear other than the khuf or the jawrab. They would wear sometimes the jawrab or the khuf and the jurmuq on top of it, and that would protect their feet inside. So I take the Zahiri madhab in this. It's your choice to take whatever. I'm just saying what their reasoning was. Okay. It has to remain on the foot. Yes, it has to remain on the foot, because if you put on your sock, then you, in a state of tahara, then you broke your tahara, then now you want to wipe on the sock again while you took off the socks. Your socks might have slipped on when you were in a state of najasa, right? So you adjusting it after and putting it back on, that doesn't really make sense, because when you put it back on, you were not in a state of tahara. So it has to be something that stays on the foot and remains on the foot. This makes sense. And so there can't be any holes that expose the skin. I'm sure you guys remember when we were talking about washing the foot during the wudu. There's the hadith in Bukhari about you're not supposed to wear the khuf when you're in Hajj or whatever, and so you can't wipe on it. You have to wash your foot. But they told the people, okay, but if you don't have sandals or anything to wear, then you can still wear the khuf, but at least cut it under the ankles. And why they cut it under the ankles is because you can't wipe upon it anymore. So there's a hole under the ankle, between whatever, left, right, same thing. You cut something under, that means you can't wipe upon it. And we already mentioned these proofs during the last lesson for the khuf. So it's the same thing. Okay. And they do not need to be waterproof, because there's nothing specific that says they need to be waterproof. It's a jawrab. The jawrab can't be waterproof. So, yeah. Okay, now we mentioned the Sahabas. Okay, and now let's talk about wiping on the jurmuq. Okay? Wiping on the jurmuq, which is kind of the boot. It's reported by Bilal al-Habashi radiyallahu anhu. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam made wudu and wiped on the imama and the muq. The muq is the jurmuq. Okay, like Abu Dawood recorded it and said the muq is the jurmuq, and al-Hakim and al-Dhahabi graded it to be sahih. Yeah, so the jurmuq is something that goes over the sock, and we can wipe upon it if it meets the criteria. Like we said, it has to cover both feet up to including the ankles. It has to be permissible. It has to be tahir, and a few other things. But either way, this thing is there. So, alhamdulillah. And أقول قولي هذا أستغفر الله لي ولكم.